why you need to read. So this is the thing. I was in fact quite dumb, if I'm gonna be honest with you. I was a straight C student. And I get it. Not that, you know, structured education in that capacity matters that much in terms of intellect, in terms of your capacity to become intelligent. But the reality was I was dumb. I felt it, I knew it. I was not able to do very simple tasks. And so I was frustrated. I remember one time I was trying to write an essay. I was in community college. I was trying to write an essay, and I could, for the life of me, not craft a thesis, right? What the focal point, if you will, of the heart of a paper, quote unquote, right? And so I went to the writing center, and I remember I ran into this guy from high school, and I was like, "What's up, buddy?" It was good to catch up with him. He was a very intelligent guy. Probably still is to this day. I think he was getting his PhD or something at Duke. Anyhow, so then he tells me, and then I'm like, "Look, buddy, like I want to get smart. Like, what should I do?" And he's like, "Well, you should start reading." And I was like, "All right, I'll do anything." And so he recommended me, and this was the first book I ever read. It was called The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. I think he got, he also, it was a whack job, but he got indicted in the whole Me Too movement. He was being a little creepy. And it makes sense, right? Because if you read that book, you'll understand like where it's coming from. And so him getting in trouble didn't surprise me much after you read the book. Anyhow, I began reading in earnest, right? I started buying books like many books. I would buy like 6 or 7 at a time, and I was just reading. And then I noticed a difference after a few months that I was like, wow, I can actually formulate opinions. I can have rebuttals. I can have counter arguments. I could have a voice, right? I had a palette from which to express myself. I got to see things in more vivid detail. I was able to capture experiences, moments, and it was just such a opening for me, right? Because before that, I definitely felt limited. And so it did help me in regards to school, but it also just helped me in life in general. And this is where I think for you and for anyone that's interested in thinking about, well, what can I do to kind of stand out from the crowd? It is obviously to read, but to read things, read stories, read ideas from authors that are really going to capture the human spirit. Because that's really where you're going to learn sort of life's lessons, right? It's not in the New York Times bestsellers, although maybe you could find some gems in there, but really it's the classics. I realized like I used to be like, oh, I'm an anti-classic guy. I'm going to read everything that people tell me not to read. But there's a reason why there's classics. There's enough people that have read them that agree that these are the books that should be read because the lessons in there should be had by everyone. There's a collective sort of bargaining that comes with that. And so I encourage everybody to read the classics. Start there, the quote unquote canon, to really get an idea of what I mean by the human spirit. That is going to help you a lot in regards to really trying to understand what you need to do to level up, essentially, right? What else? What else can I tell you about the fact that reading is so important? The other thing is anybody who wants to engage with the world, what I say is you read the stuff, you take it in, you ingest it, and then you play around with it, you toy with it, you utilize it to sort of have fun with the world. Because really, the difference between someone that can convey something and someone that can't is, do you have the art of storytelling? Can you weave together a certain experience or certain thing that happens into something digestible for someone that doesn't know what you went through or what you experienced? That is the difference maker for sure. The other thing too is when it comes to reading is like the world does open up to you. A lot of the places that I wanted to visit really came from reading about these places, reading about Colombia. I was like, I got to go to Colombia. Reading about Mexico, I wanted to go to Mexico City. Reading about the Mediterranean, I have a fascination with the Mediterranean. I need to go there. So all these places that I read about, I wanted to go see these places. So part of it was that initial spark, right? That would help me, and that motivated me ultimately to get outside. So that's it, right? The idea is take what you will, take what you can, from these words and then use it for something. Okay. I don't think the end goal of being a bookworm or being an avid reader is just to read for the sake of reading. I think it is to utilize it, to put it in practice, to learn from it, to grow from it, and use that to change your circumstances. For me, I managed to, I think in my mind, for sure, become an intelligent person. Quite limited for sure. I'm not going to say that I'm not, but from where I was to where I am, I mean, the differences are pretty vast. The other thing is too, like I said, part of the frustration came from what I was not able to essentially get what I wanted, right? So I had to make a change, and that change for me was to learn to just to be a self learner essentially. I was like, if I keep waiting for people to learn to feed me things, then I'm gonna be waiting in line permanently. And so a simple adjustment for me, and what I recommend for you, is to pick up a book, and slowly you build that muscle, just like any other type of muscle. It grows over time, it gets stronger, it grows, and then you're able to load it up with more weight, if you will, more pages, if it makes sense. The other thing is too, when you read, your ability to express yourself really does come out. And I mean, I will say this: unfortunately, when you're dealing with normies, when you're dealing with the plebs, unfortunately, what ends up happening is a lot of people take it wrong and they think that you're trying to sound smarter than you actually are. And then what ends up happening is people are a little bit resentful and think that you're trying to sound smart, and start asking you if you're making up words. Maybe it's best to stay away from those type of people. Understand your audience. Be careful about who you do that with. But it does help with becoming more eloquent, being able to sort of describe exactly what you want. Because I think that's one thing I've been able to do for sure, is being able to clearly express my needs and desires to the public, to strangers, to people I know, just to become a better communicator in all endeavors. The other thing is too, um, that I think one of the milestone moments for me, like that kind of crystallized idea in my head that I needed to become smart, and in order to do that, I needed to read, was that I was taking a history class in community college, and it was one of those classes where, like, the professor, it was very difficult to deal with him. He was southern, sloppy, nasally, um, gay man. So he had a lot of complexes, and he was a jerk off, and he was a monster. So at the end of the semester, we have an essay to do, like a term paper, and I end up, doing the term paper, right? I survived till the end of the semester. I was happy. I pushed myself. I was like, I hate this class, but I'm going to push myself to do my best. And he's passing back the papers, and the weeks go by, and I'm like, well, where the hell's my paper? Where's my grade? And he's like, oh, he kept saying like, oh, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I should have thought, knowing now, it's like, that's very suspicious. He, then on the last day, he comes and tells me to go to his office, and it's like this. I mean, his office was just like his headspace. It was a mess. I mean, he's like asking me to sit down. It's like, bro, where do I sit? Like, I might as well just sit on the floor. It was disgusting in there. And then he tells me that, like, yeah, I guess I failed the paper because I had not cited one sentence, and so he failed me for that. And it was just like an impotence that I had never felt before, right? I just felt I couldn't do anything about it. And I remember just like leaving, walking to my car, and like, I think I cried. I cried from the frustration. I cried out of frustration. And I think that moment really made me realize, like, I never want to get taken advantage of ever again, or allow somebody to step on me the way he did ever again. And sure enough, I mean, ever since then, I became a fighter. Physically, mentally, spiritually, I became a fighter. I was like, there's no way that I'm ever going to let somebody do that to me if I can. And, I tried my best to make sure that I can never put myself in a position where I can get caught up in a trap like that again. And so it was definitely a heavy lesson, but a worthy one, because like I said, after that, that really motivated me to be like, well, I want to be able to defend myself. And the way to defend myself would be to figure out, how to best do that, right? With words, of course. And so becoming a wordsmith was a big part of it. And like I said, if if anything, that is one of the reasons to read, is to read for the sake of giving you the tools to equip yourself to better defend yourself in the world, right? Because this is the world we live in now. We don't live in a world where you have to go and start stabbing people. We live in a world where you have to be able to finesse your way. You have to be able to ask for things. You have to be able to convince someone of what it is that you want them to do, or what it is that you hope that they can do for you. And you would be surprised how much further you get in life if you understand the power of words, if you understand how to utilize language to your advantage. And like I said, this is a lesson from me to you, because like I said, I used to be a person that did not know how to express myself. And what ends up happening to people that don't know how to express themselves is it ends up coming out in often negative ways. And so you want your best to avoid falling into that trap of, being violent or starting fights or picking fights with people, because you don't know how to express your frustration, your anger, your angst. So very important to come away with that, right? Is get some books. And I wouldn't even go as far as to recommend you anything per se, although I don't mind doing that in a different video. But the reason why I don't necessarily recommend anything is because certain things are for certain people, right? I don't recommend actual titles. Although I will say this, I have read a lot of things that honestly I'm like, how is this even publishable? And then you realize like nepotism is real. Buddy's friends with somebody that's a publisher, right? And I think that's what most books are now. It's just like the grimiest stuff ever. I mean, low quality. Like the barrier of entry is non-existent in my opinion. I've read some things that I'm like, this could have been a 20-page article and that would have sufficed. But unfortunately, like I said, people have friends in high places, and maybe there's a lesson there too. But the reality is, I go back to the classics, go back to the books that have. I have a rule: things that are old and have been able to sustain themselves over time, the test of time. Those are the things that I go for. All right, anything relatively new, I try to shy away from. A bit hesitant on. I wait till the popularity wanes, and then I see if it's still worth reading or not. But anyhow, I hope this helped, and I'll see you on the next one.